There's something powerful about the journey of leadership, the daily steps, the long-term vision, and everything we learn along the way. Welcome to Leadership Labs, where we explore these journeys with the incredible leaders of Aurora Public Schools. In each episode, we'll hear from those who are helping guide our district toward Destination APS, their stories, their challenges, and the lessons they've learned along the way. Today, we're excited to have Marcella Garcia, principal of Aurora Hills Middle School. For 8 years, Marcella has been leading the Aurora Hills community, helping them navigate through challenges and guide them toward renewed success as they rebound to pre-pandemic performance levels and push toward their best year yet. Marcella's leadership provides valuable insights into the unique space that middle school occupies in students' educational journeys. Let's explore how she builds bridges between elementary and high school, between academics and adolescent development, and between school and the broader Aurora community she serves in so many capacities. Welcome.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me here.
Yeah. We're excited to talk to you. As you know, we've talked to Superintendent Mike at the district level. We also went elementary, high school. So now we're in the sweet spot with middle school. But before we dive into your leadership journey, just tell us a little bit about who you are.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you for, letting me be here today and be with all of you guys. I've been with Aurora Hills since 2017, but I've actually been with the district I joined the district in 2011, where I got to be an assistant principal at Gateway High School. So that's kind of really when I first stepped into this district and being able to actually be in the feeder. So that this community in which I serve, I've been serving for quite a while, and very much so. I love this community. Actually, I was in Cherry Creek a little bit before, but I was really at Prairie and Oberlin, which is like a mile away. So they kind of touch the border there since 2003. And so that community really has been something where I have loved it. I've loved the authenticity of my community. Our kids are real. Our families are real. They want to know that you truly care about who they are, but also where they're going to go. And so it's been really, really fun to be a part of my community.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
I love that. And you and I, to build off a little bit of what you just said, but you and I recently had a conversation about how important it is for us to ensure that staff who work here, both in Aurora Hills as well as Aurora Public Schools at large, truly have their hearts in our community. Tell us about that a little bit more, and then also please share what makes the Aurora Hills community so special.
Yeah, well, I mean, I kind of alluded a little bit to it, of the authenticity and just the realness of our community. But when we were talking about who makes this area and this, who would be the perfect fit for our community, and those are the people that really have a passion for kids, meaning that where they see diversity as a strength, and that it is something where our kids, they will smell you in 2.2 seconds if you do not care about them, if you don't believe in them, and if you see them different than anything of who they really are. And so they want you to be your quirky self, whoever you are, whoever you're bringing, to the table, they want you to be just as authentic. And so when we do our hiring and when we're looking for those people, we want them to, number one, understand the challenges in which we have, but also the strength in which we have, and how to build on that, and how to see that as something that feeds them and is a passion for them. And so, yes, when we look for educators, we're really looking for somebody who knows that it can be gritty. Sometimes we're really having to, especially at the middle school level, we're having to close gaps sometimes in academics that are really challenging. And so that's where in a teacher's classroom, they could have lots of different pieces where they're having to manage and maneuver. And that takes a special educator.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
To build a little bit on that, tell us more about what's unique about middle school leadership especially at this stage in young people's lives and their social development and
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think about when I was in middle school, and I think we all do, and we're like, oh gosh, I don't know if we'd ever want to go back to that space, right?
right.
Because our hormones are all over the place. I have a new kid every single day because they're new hormonally every
Oh,
day
sure.
as they're growing and as they're developing. But what's really fun about a middle school kid is that they really are, they're learning, they're trying to develop as in who they are as a person, who they are, like, even, as they start finding passions that they really actually start to figure out, like, ooh, I could do this like for a career, and I could actually, like, this could be cool. And so this is where I feel like for middle school, you get to still work with their heart and, like, develop those kind of pieces. But then you are also starting to get, as they get into eighth grade, they're really starting to figure out, ooh, who do I really want to be, and what are some paths? And so that's, I think, a very unique, coming from the high school, but also understanding our middle school kid. You got to have a lot of humor. You got to have a lot of patience
Right.
because they make you laugh every day.
Yeah.
So, it's a different piece at middle school, but I think the middle school teacher is a really special teacher. After, for secondary, you've got high school, but you also have middle school, and a middle school teacher is somebody who I love working with because they've got humor, but they understand the uniqueness of our kids, but they're working on not only building that content, but also, like, helping a student start to build the character in the person and who they really are becoming. And they're very collaborative. They understand, like, coming together as a team is, like, so much more powerful than being by themselves. And so it's a pretty cool space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am reminded of my own middle school days and actually share quite often a story about, a teacher who really impacted my life.
Mm-hmm.
I give a lot of credit to him for even just going to college, wanting to be a teacher. And it was my eighth grade math teacher, Mr. Lane, who, middle school teacher who stuck with me as a mentor through high school, who, I have a lot of appreciation and love and support for middle school educators.
Yeah.
Tell me about what first drew you to education.
Yeah, my own children and my husband always actually tease me about this one because I'm like one of those odd people that always knew what I was going to do. Since I was very little, I always knew I was going to be a teacher because I always played school at home. My brothers had to be my, like, students, and so we would, give them tests and quizzes and all of the things, but I would play school all the time. But then also not only playing school, but I was always tutoring other kids, or I was always trying to, help people learn, and I loved it. And so kind of always knew that that was just what I was going to do.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's pivot a little bit from being a teacher. Can you share your path to becoming a principal? Was there a defining moment when you knew or you realized that school leadership was for you?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously starting and being an educator was really that moment, but my first degree is in curriculum and instruction. And I was getting, like, all of my papers, all of the things that I was doing within that. Every paper said, I will never be an administrator.
Right.
Like, I really actually want to find those papers because, like, I remember it saying, I will never do that. But what happened after I got that degree, I started realizing, like, oh, hey, this is really cool. I understand what really good instruction and really good curriculum, like, looks like, and how to implement that. And so when I'd see my colleagues struggling or, like, needing help, I'd be like, oh, let me go try to help them. But I was struggling with being the educator, but then also, like, trying to help them. And so, time wise. And so, but then I also thought about the impact that I was helping. Like, I was having my own, like, little impact, but if I helped another teacher, I was helping a whole nother group of students. And so that's where I really started seeing the passion, or the want to be able to be in administration, to actually help like a lot more students, and my reach would be a lot different. And so that's where I saw that. I was like, okay, you probably should step into this, and have loved it ever since.
And that's coming from a high school teacher who already probably saw over 100 kids a day.
Yep.
But you wanted your impact to be, from 100 to 1,000.
Right.
Which, it's funny. I'm an elementary guy. I had a similar experience, and for me, it was, 30 kids who I saw all day, every day, but similar, want to have 500 kids, in the elementary school. But that's great. I didn't know that I always wanted to even be a teacher, but I knew as soon as I graduated high school, because Mr. Lane helped me to get into college, and I just knew he had like changed the trajectory of my life, and I wanted to be like him. So let's talk a little bit about any key mentors you have who help to shape your leadership approach.
Yeah, so I mentioned before that I had worked at Prairie Middle School, and there was a principal. Her name was Candy Cassidy, and she actually worked for APS for a little bit. She worked, she's been around Colorado for a while, but has retired ever since and moved out of the state. But Candy was one that she always treated people with respect, and she was a transformational leader in her own right, but also a servant leader, and she'd always give respect to get it, and there was just, she had a true passion about her that I always respected, and just again how she treated people, what she expected of our students was always a bar very much so set very high, and then her expectation even for us as teachers set that expectation as well. And so she was definitely one that really impacted me. And then I would say Dacre Davis was a principal here. She was the principal at Gateway for a little while with me, and now she's working in DPS, but as a high school principal there too. But she, her authenticity and her drive and grit, for our students, and would go above and beyond for anybody who worked with her, but also for our kids and our community, was something that was unprecedented for me. So always respected her, and she pushed me to be that kind of leader as well. So
that's so great.
Yeah.
Well, you've talked a little bit about being close to Aurora for your whole career. What was it that brought you over to Aurora Public Schools specifically? And then also, how did you go from Gateway to Aurora Hills?
Yeah.
The high school to middle transition.
Right. That transition. Well, so I, what brought me to APS was actually an opportunity at Gateway to be an assistant principal. But one of the things that I did research wise, and just talking with actually other colleagues that had been in Aurora Public Schools, was again, I use that word a lot, authenticity, but I really, that's a huge core value of mine.
What?
Yeah. Okay. There you go. And so when I can see, in Cherry Creek, it was hard. There was a challenge that we had to, it felt like you had to hide it and you couldn't really talk about it. Whereas here it was, we may have a challenge, but let's problem solve. Let's think outside the box. How can we solve this problem? And so I really loved that. That was a draw for me, was that hey, we've got some richness, we've got some great, amazing things to happen, or that are happening here, but at the same time, how can we make it even better? And so to me, that was something that really drew me to APS. I think, the piece from a high school into middle school, my first 2 years of teaching, I taught at an alternative high school in Inglewood. And the students, here I was 22 starting out, and I was teaching a 21-year-old. And that was eye-opening for me. And no judgment, no nothing like that. It just obviously life choices, but also life trajectory. And I started realizing, man, and he was determined to graduate. He did. I was very proud of him. He got his diploma, and that was what he wanted, which was awesome. And that's why we were there. But average, my students were about 19 at that time. And so still had just missed some trajectory pieces. And that second year, I really started reflecting and thinking about like, because what they were doing was amazing, but it was really hard for them. They were working and then trying to come to school. And I was like, man, if we could have changed that trajectory and helped you so that it wasn't so hard right now in your life, when would that be? And I'd asked them all, and they all said middle school. And I thought, wow, that's interesting. They would all go back to 8th grade is what they would say to change that trajectory and change that. So I was in the high school pieces. That's actually when I went to Prairie and taught for 8 years there, and then stepped into the high school level after that. But I still always drew myself back to middle because that is a trajectory changing time. And if we can get their skills, if we can get like as kids start to figure out their own belonging and where they're going and what they're doing, you can really do a changing a trajectory for them in high school. So that's where, for me, it was a passion to become a middle school principal, to help with that trajectory. I knew where they were going and what they needed there. And if I could really make an impact at that level, that's kind of where I would want to go.
Well, 8 years at one school, I think, especially nowadays, is a significant amount. I feel like we have a handful of folks who, are above the 10-year mark, where I think even 10 or 20 years ago, that was normal, right? Like, 10, 15, 20-year principals. The most for me at one school was 6 years. And I thought I was going to be there forever. You've also shared with me in a previous conversation a little bit about what has kept you there for 8 years, and would love for you to just share with all of us what has kept you so dedicated to Aurora Hills for the last 8 years.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I mentioned that I love the community. It feels like home, right? So to me, that is a home. When I started back in 2017, the school was in turnaround, and being on the clock and trying to get us off of that was a driving factor. And we came up with a very creative schedule that no one in Colorado has. And I say we thought outside of the box, but we used the inside of the box to be able to do that, and created some shifts. And in that second year for me, we actually, in a proud moment, that we got at a turnaround within a year, which is actually very remarkable. That usually does not happen, and so very, very excited about that. And then we ended up, then that was where COVID hit the next year. To like really get off the clock, you got to have 2 years to do that. And so for me, then when we came back from coming back from the pandemic, it was, man, we really had some ground to make up, and we unfortunately fallen off the clock. And so I am one that, like, I don't start something and I don't do something unless I really make sure that I like finish it very well. And so for me, I really wanted to make sure that like we could demonstrate the amazingness of our kids and like the academics in which they really do possess, and the amazingness of our staff. And so, this last year we got back off the clock. And so, I portray that that's going to happen this year too. I'm going to predict
best
that.
Year
and best year yet. And so we will really get off that clock. But I think for me, ensuring and showing our community off of how like amazing they really are is what I really want.
And to break down the fourth wall a little bit for folks who are listening, Marcella shared that story with me, I don't know, 4 or 5 months ago. And unprompted, you took us exactly back there. So thank you for sharing that. I think there's so much value to that commitment and dedication that you have for Aurora Hills. And Aurora Hills, as you alluded to just now, is and has been on a journey back to pre-pandemic performance. And again, we're talking best year yet. Can you walk us a little bit through that rebound process and any strategies that on this side of the pandemic have helped to make the difference?
Yeah, I think, when we came back from the pandemic, I think the entire country really started seeing like, oh my gosh, wow, we've got a whole new normal, right? Like that was a new saying of like the new normal, because it was different.
Yeah.
And our entire country was different. And one of the things that I think, just even with our political climate during the pandemic and, everything that was coming through that time, we really had to start building the belonging and the connectedness again, like from scratch, like back to like something where we had taken things like that for granted, that we had already like, oh, kids knew who I was and they've seen me and they know who I, that was a for granted kind of moment. And so we really had to like think about empathy and understand about fear that people were having about coming back into the school. And, they've been in their homes and they've been, so there was a lot of, I think, social and emotional learning that hadn't really, like, there wasn't as much of a need as much that we saw like before versus after. Again, not to say that there wasn't ever a need before, but like not to this level. And so I think for us, really making sure that we like invest in that. I mean, now I have like 4 counselors, I've got a social worker, and those are all just like to help our kids with kind of the rising need in our community. And so we've just really made sure that like we invested in that, like more of that social emotional learning coming back, so that then kids really could access and like really demonstrate the like knowledge that they had, because that was just not going to come through if we didn't.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. This morning we talked a little bit about the importance of celebrating even the small steps during our lead and learn, and just curious, with the some of the big successes you've had, but also curious about some of the smaller achievements, the weekly stuff, the monthly kind of thing. How do you celebrate your staff and your students at Aurora Hills?
Yeah, so I mean, we do a lot of celebrating because yes, I think especially at the middle school level, we got to have fun and we got to have joy.
That's right.
And so, even when we had our power outage and our internet surge, we had dress up days, and we had dressed like the 80s because we didn't have, or 90s, depending, because that was you didn't have internet at that time. And so like, what did that look like? This is what you look like, but also, we know what it looks like not to have internet.
Yes.
So, we try to have fun even in those moments. Our staff does a theme we have a staff meeting every month. And so we try to do a theme and have the kids guess what our theme is. Like this theme was dress like spring. And so everybody had to try to figure out, how do you dress like spring? And so the kids had to guess. And, just things like that. We'll have weeks where we'll have spirit, weeks for kids and things like that. But even like every teacher work day. So tomorrow is a teacher work day. I will always feed my staff. So I make them breakfast and, try to just take care of them and have just moments where they can eat together, be together. One of the things that I've learned when I was at Gateway, I was there when the theater shooting happened, and they had, we had really worked with the psychologists that had traveled, like whenever there is a shooting or things like that, that they actually come and they work with teams, and they worked with us as a team. And one of the things they talked about was actually why eating together was so important, and like why even when they have like a diplomatic, meeting or what have you, everybody comes and eats together, because it helps us to like kind of lessen our guard, and that we just be able to we're able to kind of have that safety. And so I try to really have moments even like that with my staff. So yes, I try to feed them so that we can all have kind of a family meeting, or kind of like eating and fun that way, and a celebration that way. But we're gearing up for CMAS, which we're going to be doing some celebrations that way too. And we try to get kids, we celebrate their thinking. So we celebrate their scratch paper and like what they're doing that way. We can't really celebrate like, hey, how hard are you working? But the scratch paper, the thinking that way is a great piece. And so we are getting them geared up to show all of their thinking, because that is how we demonstrate and we show the world about how great we are, and one way right now. But yeah,
we celebrate them coming every day, no
right?
makeup.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, so those are we try to get creative that way. But last year we started that and had so much fun. Before and after, but they get some prizes for that, and so yeah.
I think I might know the answer, but I don't know. I asked this question and folks change it up on me and surprise me. So in any marathon, there are significant mile markers that stand out. And over the course of the last 8 years, I know there's a lot each year that you've been proud of. Is there a big moment or something that over the course of the last 8 years, has been your proudest moment at Aurora Hills?
Yeah, well, I mean, I kind of alluded to, I kind of spoke about that first year, where we, really got out of turnaround in 1 year. I was a brand new principal, never had been, and took on this very change management kind of schedule that second year, going into that. And so it was one of those, taking on all of that. Some people would have called me crazy, which could be true, for taking that all on. But I think that was like the most, for me, monumental of like living through change management and having this very crazy different kind of schedule. But like the impact of that schedule and what I believed in was the impact that we saw on academics. And so that made me really, really smile about like, if we do this, like students, but also staff really see the benefit and the impact of it.
Yeah, I was gonna guess that the doing it twice.
Well, yes, I mean that was a moment, but yes,
the pre-pandemic after year one and the post-pandemic, but I mean that's a huge victory, huge celebration. Kudos to you and to the team.
Yeah.
And one last question on this section I have. I know, and I have the honor of getting to work with you in a few different spaces, including the calendar committee. I know you serve in multiple leadership capacities across this district as a mentor to other leaders, as a friend and colleague. How do you balance school leadership with broader district commitments, and how do they inform each other?
Yeah. Well, I think, now I say over the years, right, I have really built a strong team, to where I can't do it by myself. Like when you say congratulations to you and your team, like my team is really like, I'm only as great as they are as well, And so for me, I've really built systems that I have amazing people that can help me keep the school going. And, obviously I'm here with you and not at the school. And so I have amazing people that are helping kind of run those systems and implement the systems that I've kind of created. And so that's then helped me to kind of balance, and help others. That's where I think, yes, we've had a few new principals into the middle school team and community, and that it's been fun being able to help them and share the things that I've learned and, the impact that I've seen, but also with the committees. Like, yes, I'm on negotiations right now and, things like that. But I feel like that's where hearing also what's going on helps me kind of bring those things back to my school, but also hopefully help with the rest of the district and have a different impact there as well. So I think the balance is having a really amazing team that allows me to do that. But then, being able to, shift that.
And for folks who are listening, of course, I don't, this goes without say, but that's a gem, right? For folks, that I think is really important for us to name is just the building of teams, but also, being fortunate and lucky to be able to surround yourself with great folks to support the work and work collaboratively. And so thank you for that gem.
Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna shift into the playlist section. So this is my personal favorite curiosity.
Gotcha.
And so I I need the right soundtrack. Leaders need inspiration to keep moving forward. For me, sometimes it's an audiobook, sometimes it's music, sometimes it's a podcast. And recently, I've been enjoying the book Locker Room Talk, which is both an inspiring story of one woman's determination to do a job dominated by men. So she's a sports journalist, and in the 70s won a big Supreme Court case. She's actually was a really close friend of my late mother-in-law's, and I just started reading the book, and so it's really good. Is there a book that has influenced either your approach to leadership or just something you read recently that you might recommend to an aspiring leader out there or anyone who's listening?
Yeah, well, I mean, yes, right now I've been actually addicted to more fantasy, and kind of just jumping outside. But I think one of the things that I've been grounding in education, and you actually have mentioned this where I've seen it, is the anxious generation. I think to me right now that has been resonating. I have older children. So my oldest is 22 and my youngest is 20. And they really were this anxious generation, right? They lived through this whole piece. And I wish I could like rewind time to have like implemented a lot of the different recommendations, but also like safety nets around our kids. And I am very, very thankful and fortunate. Right now, we are one of the pilot schools that get to have Yonder. We're going to utilize the Yonder pouches, and we've been taking weeks to get everyone educated and really up to speed about what I have been learning through that book, and the research that it provides. But like really just that we're like, it's a crisis. But every time that I've been sharing either the book or what have you, people are like, oh my gosh, I gotta share this with, anybody else, because if you can read it and listen to it, if you have kids or you have anybody, like you have family members that have children that are going to be, getting into this generation, it's like, oh yes, please protect them. And try to have your community of folks, whether, what have you, around your kids, also all come together and be the same like-minded, because you need that. But yeah, that's been the book that's really been impacting like what I'm doing and leading with our no phones, no phone policy. But also just how can I help and protect and, help our kids?
Absolutely. And I think you hit it spot on. As I was reading the book too, I was like, oh, whoa, like I'm learning a lot and reflecting a lot. And it's funny because Cozy, who you all are familiar with, I'm thinking about him of how do we keep him off devices and and so it's a good one. If you haven't, highly recommend.
Sometimes I feel because I have a daughter and I have a son, and so I mean they weren't the total poster children in that piece, but like definitely they are addicted in those kind of ways that they really show and articulate around boys, around girls, and just image. And it's just, man, I feel like sometimes I feel like if I could have protected him a little bit better, if I would have known.
So now you know better.
Yes. Exactly. Now I can make an impact
at Aurora Hills.
Yes, exactly.
Exactly. Okay, Marcella, what's playing in your leadership headphones lately in terms of music?
My music. Well, I've literally been really only listening to audiobooks.
That's good.
But I would say Eye the Tiger. Eye the Tiger is one of those just like, get you pumped up, hopefully back in the race, going through the wall, like spring break, we're going to need to rest a little bit and
play that as you walk back in.
Yes. I think that'll be I think it was mile 23 on your show today where we were at in a marathon. But so then we'll be playing Eye of the Tiger.
Good. Mm-hmm. I haven't been able to get the song Cielito Lindo out of my head. Rue, which is our youngest son, he sings it all the time, and so I pick him up from his school, and the front office secretary calls him Cielito Lindo. She's
Oh,
like, bye,
no.
Cielito Lindo, because he sings it all the time. And so it's like constantly in my head.
Mhm.
All right, lightning
Okay.
round.
Yes, lightning round.
As we approach the final lap of our conversation, let's sprint through some quick reflections.
Yeah.
First, what does Destination APS mean to you and Aurora Hills?
Yeah, well, I mean, thinking about the 4 goals that like really Mike talks about inside of that, the academic achievement and really thinking about post-secondary readiness, right?
Mhm.
So we're really looking right now, as to really demonstrating all of what we've learned this year
Yes.
into CMAS, as we were talking about, but also getting our 8th graders ready
Totally.
for our high school and,
Mhm.
their respective high schools, but also bringing in our, newbie 6th graders
Right.
coming in. And so thinking about those pieces, really just making sure that we make an impact there
Yeah.
right now. And then I think within the collaborative and inclusive community, especially with this yonder pouch that I was telling you about, and like really the shift inside of our community, we've really been engaging with our families in such a way that has been just really amazing. And I've loved the conversations. I've loved being able to, we've had multiple, times with families and talking about impact and thinking about how do we, because a lot of it also is like trust, right?
Totally.
Is like building trust because, usually if a kid has their phone, they can just trust the kid, to be doing that. But right now this is like allowing us to build that. And so at this time, like we're really getting some momentum around just like thinking about how do we do that. And I've had some really inspiring parents that have really helped me to think about, hey, how do you keep building? How do you show, our wonderful educators and show the faces like, hey, this is our front office staff, and showing pictures of that, and like, this is who you're going to be communicating with. So it's been fun inside of that and like collaborating. I think, just safety in general, that's been a huge like issue in the fact of like worrying about like, okay, if I can't get a hold of my student, but just really making sure that like these are the pieces that we have inside of the school, like just educating our families, but even our teachers and kids, like, hey, you are going to be safe. We've got, thanks to Kevin, really bringing in Red Bag and like just the things that help with that and calming people down in that way, but like really building upon those things, I think, but also building on where like with kids being safe in our schools. Thinking about that. And then, you had mentioned earlier, we had talked about hiring amazing educators. Totally. And we just actually 2 weeks ago was the APS hiring fair. And I was there and we found some amazing educators already. Good. So that was a really helpful piece. And we've actually had them come in, see the school, see what we're about. And that was an amazing resource, but also thinking about in this next phase right now of really hiring some more quality talent. And so really thinking about, this kind of phase is where we're at right now with Destination APS.
Thank you. We're on our way.
Okay. Yes, we are. Yeah, that is true. And, helping them to, when you think of a destination, you're thinking about a place like a desired outcome, a place where you want to be with your community and like all of those things. Yeah, that's what we want.
Totally.
Yeah.
What's your go-to strategy to navigate challenging days?
Yeah. So, I always have to get refilled by my kids, my students, I don't have favorites, but there are some favorites. We have some students who have some special needs, and I have various programs in my building. And one of the classrooms I always visit in the mornings, and we say hi, and I get attendance points for coming. And but
take your attendance.
Yes, they watch a monster growth, things like that. But they just give me joy. And so I always have to just kind of sometimes go in, and sometimes I'll just sit in a classroom and I just want to be with the kids. And so that really does refuel me and make me happy. So it's my happy place is what I call it.
All right.
Yeah.
Aurora Hills on track for best year yet. What's one thing that's driving to help make that happen this year?
Yeah. I honestly, I would say my amazing team. I've got an amazing, and I team as in all of my teachers, my team around me. they work so hard.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, every single day showing up in, I mean, yes, we've had various, I'd say, crazinesses, where you just, stuck points and, potholes, if you want to say, whatever. But man, they are like the most resilient and dedicated, people. And so, that's where, and really just love our kids and love our community. And so I just feel blessed in who I have, So yeah, that's who's going to make it.
All right. Last question for you. What advice would you give to someone who's considering middle school leadership?
Yeah. I would say, you got to have a sense of humor. You can't take yourself serious all the time, and you got to show them that you're human, right? You got to show them you can have fun. I might have seen a video of you today of you being fun, right? And having some maybe antlers, I don't know. But like, I think it really, you had talked about the joy and having joy. And that is one of those things that you just, yes, you are supposed to be professional, and you are, there are those pieces of the role, right? But at the same time, like, you got to know your audience, right? You got to know who you're working with and how, they got to see you have fun, and they got to see that, oh my gosh, she can, do this, or he can do that, and that they laugh with you and that you have fun with them. And, like we just had we call it Mustang Friday night, where the kids come and there's all different things that they can do. And yes, there's music and dancing if they want to. And, but like, get out there and dance. And, you gotta be a part of that. And I think inside of middle school, you got to, be willing to do that. Right. I mean, obviously your instructional knowledge and all of the things that you need, to really run systems, definitely you got to have all that. But I think the biggest piece in a middle school is you gotta, yes. Yeah.
Thank you. Maybe I'll clip it into this episode.
You should.
So they know what you're talking about. Marcella, thank you for sharing your leadership journey with us today. Your insights highlight how middle school leadership truly requires building bridges, both between childhood as well as young adolescence, between subjects and skills, and between school and community. Appreciate all of the gems that you shared with me and with everyone who's listening. Want to invite anyone who's listening to join us next time as we continue exploring the paths of those who are helping guide us toward Destination APS. Until then, as I always say, keep running your pace with purpose. Thank you.
Thank you.